Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Alan Singer.
We're taping this session the Wednesday before our Monday air. Today is Wednesday, May 7th, if I've got my dates correctly. And brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Zoom's Technology, and I believe it will air next Monday on Manhattan Neighborhood Network if all goes well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But right at the top of the show, Bob, let's pay tribute to one of our longtime journalist friends, colleagues, founding member of NABJ.
Sure, it's nice to start off with some good news for a change, even though he's not with us anymore. But Chuck Stone, former editorial writer for the Philadelphia Daily News, actually the first Black editorial writer for the Philadelphia Daily News, was and one of the co-founders of NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists, was awarded a special Pulitzer Prize citation on Monday for his lifetime of work, both not just supporting good journalism, but his civil rights battles. He's didn't know this. He was a Tuskegee Airman. That's where he got his Air Force training, and his bow tie, which you can barely see, was rather iconic if you knew him. Uh,
Remember?
at, so yeah, I got to meet him only a couple times at NABJ conferences and regionals and whatnot. But with Chuck, uh, the point was quality. If you had skills, he would help you. He wasn't the type to hook you up if you didn't have any skills. And when I saw this come up on the Columbia University Pulitzer Prize site, that was heartwarming because it's like we were saying before we went on air, Eric. It's not often that people actually get honored for the long work they put in. Sometimes it's too silent and it gets overlooked. So we didn't want to overlook them here today on
Yep,
Media Watch.
yep. And you know what? I'm surprised. No, I'm not so surprised. This is the kind of an editorial writer that the Pulitzer people should have been looking at while he was alive. Okay, that's just my editorial comment on that. But as they say, that old cliche, better late than never. Even if it's posthumously, I'm glad they saw fit to honor him because it's justly and well deserved. So
Yes.
yeah, good news for a change. But now we have to segue to the fact that we're still in so much craziness and turmoil where all this stuff sucking up all the global oxygen. There have been a whole lot of stories that have been overlooked, just like Chuck Stone may have been overlooked in his lifetime by some people. There are stories that you know just are getting ignored, but for my estimation, we at least should touch on them. One, of course, for us, which we've covered quite extensively over the years, is this since it started, which is a year and something now, what's going on in Gaza, because I know that the Israeli forces launched a new offensive, but then they came out with a verbal offensive of telling the world, Alan, they told the world they were going to do what as far as humanitarian aid? Please update our
Well,
viewers.
they've been blockading Gaza and preventing humanitarian aid for well over a month now. They're preventing food and medicine is what they're preventing. It's not humanitarian, it's food and medicine. And Gaza is on the verge of famine.
Mhm.
So Israel is now doing two things. One, it's saying we're forcing everybody into one area and we're going to occupy the rest. Basically, they're planning on having the military occupy 2/3 of Gaza Strip, forcing everybody else, the millions of people, into 1/3. And they're willing to distribute aid through them. But the people of Gaza, one, don't trust them. How could they? And two, anybody who is willing to collaborate with the Israelis at this point is going to become a target. I mean, the aid has been coming through independent organizations, and Israel has stopped that. Starving people to death is a war crime under international law, and Israel is committing war crimes. The other thing that there's a lot that is paying attention to, that in order for Israel to occupy and Gaza, either temporarily or permanently, it had to call up all its reserves. It's had to divert its money from schools, and Israel's economy is on the brink because of the irresponsibilities of the Netanyahu government. Its plan to seek revenge is committing genocide in Gaza, and it's destroying the Israeli economy. And our president keeps going rah, rah, rah.
Yeah, my thing about the reason why this war there continues is because the guy who runs that country, Netanyahu, needs that war so all that other judicial stuff that's hanging over his head does not come crashing down on him, which is why he tried to destroy their Supreme Court so he could control their judiciary. So that's my take on that. But for whatever reason, the people in Gaza are suffering tremendously. I mean, just relaunching the war, not trying to get those hostages out, starving people. It's just not the optics of that. No matter how many people are dying, just the optics of it. All you're doing for me is making yourself a pariah across the globe for people who care about human beings and humanity. But hey, I don't know. But anyway.
But I echo that briefly. I echo what you just said, Eric. And Netanyahu needs this just to protect himself. He's in the same mold of Trump. Trump needed to get elected to be president in order to avoid his legal hassles. He was successful, obviously. And Netanyahu had the same thing going on. What's going on in Gaza is beyond. I mean, it's basically bottomed out with this new offensive. Hamas has no real ability anymore, and you can't keep saying that you're going into an area to take out Hamas because for every one military person that's killed, and I'm not exaggerating, it's more like 50 or 100 civilians that are getting killed, and that's not a hyperbole. So this is not sustainable. The globe has to do something about this if Netanyahu won't.
This is not good stuff. The other key story that, of course, pushed off the thing because of the craziness in this country, but it's tied to us, is the war in Ukraine. The headline I saw today, Wednesday, May 7th, was the fact that after getting hit with any number of missile strikes, drone strikes, and all kinds of stuff by the Russians, the Ukrainians finally may have done it before, but I hadn't seen any reports, sent a couple of their drones in and had one particular drone strike disrupt the Russian airport that the Chinese leader Xi was coming into. I don't know, Bob, did you see something on that story about how disruptive it was? But basically for me, it's the Ukrainians saying, yeah, you still trying to starve us, kill us, bomb us out into submission, but we're still here pushing back. So hitting the airport when she was landing, I think, was psychologically a smart move on the Ukrainians' part.
I think that was the point. Right. They knocked down most of the drones, but the fact that they entered Russian airspace at all sent a big message. Like, we can get there, maybe not all the time, but yeah. So the fact that they had to close the airspace temporarily sent a message.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't President-elect Trump promised that he would end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours after he took office? And I think it's now past 100 days.
Yeah.
More than 24 hours.
Yes.
George Will had an op-ed in the Washington Post that was actually very funny on Trump's deal-making ability. And he said, well, first he promised he would give Putin everything he wanted as part before even negotiations began.
Remember that.
Then he didn't meet with Ukraine. He just sent it. He just made the announcement. But when Putin escalated the attacks, Trump tweeted back in all caps that this was wrong.
Wow.
It was all caps.
Surprise, surprise. Wow, this is wrong. Oh, I think basically recently your guy who tweeted in caps actually said something to the effect was, I don't think he wants to end the war. Did I not see that pop
Yeah.
up out of his mouth recently? Wow, what a brainstorm. Did a light bulb go off after the guy totally disregarded everything he
It was an
supposedly
aneurysm that went off.
Yes, yes.
it was an aneurysm. But that could account for why all this other craziness continued to fly. But interestingly enough about this, the guy who said he could end the war overnight may have meant by not giving Ukraine the weapons they needed to help fight off the Russians. Because basically, the other story that's been in the news was the fact that his Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, just arbitrarily decided he was not going to send the weapons that Ukraine needed that had already been approved and funded by the Congress and stopped the shipment. And what was the background behind that, Bob? I mean, this guy just all of a sudden said, no, we stopped those planes. How did that unfold and how stupid was it?
I'll try to pull up that story. But yeah, essentially, I believe it was a January 30th meeting in the White House. I guess he had a chat with President Trump about the war, and he decided apparently,
There was a
and we just
discussion.
finding this out now, apparently on his own, that 11 planes full of military supply should be turned around and not sent to Ukraine. And somehow we thought this was a good idea. It costs apparently $11 million. Well, I'll check that figure, and not that high. A few $1 million to turn the planes around.
It was
And
2 million a plane, wasn't it?
it was
Something. Now we can
that
find the numbers, but
I
it was
can
11 planes.
I'd rather get it right, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
a few $1 million wasted
And
in turning the
then
planes.
somebody said, you weren't really authorized to do that. And that really wasn't something that you could have or should have done. And so then the new decision was turn the planes that you turned around back around to send to take those. And that's
Yes,
costing us another $2 million to
yes,
rectify the stupidity of the first decision. Okay.
yes.
So that's the guy that this dodo decided was going to be our Secretary of Defense. And that Secretary of Defense, because he's been doing stupid things like putting civilians on military strike plan signal chats, which is not an authorized forum to discuss classified decision making on, doing another signal chat, putting his wife and brother into another classified chat where they're not authorized. All these stupid things that this Secretary of Defense keeps doing, that he decides, oh, well, I need to change the narrative. So he decides, okay, let's fire all these generals. And so across the board, 20% of four-star generals will fire, 20% of some other flag rank will fire, 14%, whatever the percentage, he's just firing groups of military officers by percentages. No internal study, no evaluation of what is this going to do to our military readiness. I'm just going to cut these people, and I'm doing it in the name of saving us money,
Uh,
bringing down
remind
the defense budget.
remind me, Eric. You're a veteran. Remind me, what high level military experience did he have before he became?
I think
Uh,
he may have risen to the rank of major, and I'm not sure whether that was in the Army itself or in the National Guard. I'd have to go back and look, but he did attain the rank of major. He may have commanded a small unit of troops, and that's the extent of his experience. And that's why
and
a lot of
yeah,
military people said this man is not qualified to run the Department of Defense, much less be confirmed as the Secretary of Defense. Okay. And so, yeah, so that's his game plan. But guess what? He just borrowed from the dodo that nominated him because Donald Trump, having torpedoed what was called the best economy on the planet coming out of COVID, and it was still the best economy on the planet when Donald Trump got reelected, having torpedoed that, having started a tariff war globally with just about everybody on the globe to the detriment of American businesses, small and large. His way of getting out of all the negative press and all the negative thing is to just throw stuff on the wall. Like, what did he say he was going to do to those immigrants, Alan? Where was he sending them?
Well, he has different plans. One plan is they
Plan?
were
Plan? Is
a different
okay. Let me
announcement.
not interrupt. Go ahead.
One announcement was going to send him to Rwanda. And then another announcement was going to send him to Libya. And the problem is both Libya and Rwanda said, well, we don't want them. We didn't discuss this with you. What are you talking about? So then he proposed sending him to Alcatraz, which was the old federal prison.
He's going to reopen Alcatraz. Okay.
The problem with Alcatraz is I saw the X-Men movie, and I think that's where the bad X-Men live. But I don't know if he has access to Alcatraz anymore.
Good.
It's a stupid suggestion. Alcatraz is especially stupid because it's now in the control of the Parks Department. It's a national park, and with tourists coming in to look at the ruins. That's the point. They come to look at the ruins of.
Bob, you're thinking logically. You're thinking logically. Howsoever, does Pete Hegseth think logically when he just arbitrarily stopped? Oh no, okay, spend $2 million to stop planes turning around. Oh, okay, spend $2 million to return the planes back around to their original mission. What do they care about how much it would cost to take a decrepit old prison that wasn't functioning well and was the most expensive prison to run when it was in its decrepit stage before they shut it down, to reactivate that? It would cost them probably multi-millions of dollars, if not more.
Probably billions of dollars.
Probably billions.
So he would float that out there and throw it out there because his MAGA base would eat that up. And so that's why he's doing and saying stuff like that. My problem with all this, and we haven't even touched on the craziness. And so, Alan, you're our historian of record here. This guy had an interview with Kristen Welker for Meet the Press. They did it before the normal Sunday Meet the Press. And the craziness that came out of his mouth was so bad that NBC just put that stuff out there and said, okay, folks, this is your guy. Listen to all the craziness. Give us a premium. Bob, you and Alan take turns. What was, of all the crazy stuff, give us the worst and then give us some of the other bad things.
The worst is, well, I think was the worst, is he asked if as president, he was responsible for defending the Constitution. His response was, I don't know. Now, there are a lot of problems with that because at his inauguration, he had to take a presidential oath. And the presidential oath, which he actually already taken in 2017, so this was the second time he took the oath, he said, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So he took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And then in the interview, he said he didn't know it was his job. So that was the first thing. But the other thing that drove me nuts is that in New York State, in the 7th grade social studies curriculum, it's called the New York State Social Studies Framework. So we're talking about 12-year-olds. And 12-year-olds in New York State study the Constitution and the job of the president and responsibilities of Congress. And every 12-year-old, 7th grade in the state of New York, learns it is the job of the president to defend and protect the Constitution. Maybe he slept through that lesson. I don't know. But that's his job.
Yeah, the big problem in the interview was that Kristen Welker, in her generosity, gave him multiple opportunities to walk back that comment and to explain himself. And he couldn't bring himself to do it I'm not even going to suggest whether he's just too dumb or just didn't want to.
Mm,
But she gave him multiple opportunities to just correct that. Like, oh, you're the president. You're supposed to defend the Constitution. No, he didn't do it.
I have
And
some really good lawyers. They'll know the answer.
yes, that's exactly what he said.
I
And he
might not
said
be in
something,
seventh grade.
yeah. And he said something equally bad about due process, right? He didn't know anything about that.
yeah.
And whether he actually had to allow people due process before they got trotted out of the country.
Yeah, the due process answer that was just so flabbergasting is we can't have due process because we have millions and millions of trials if we have due process. I've never heard something so idiotic coming out of anyone's mouth dealing with constitutional rights that he wants to disregard as to say, well, we would have millions of trials. Well, that's why there's due process. So you have those trials, whether they're millions or one, you're supposed to have that due process. But what frosts me and frosted a whole bunch of other folk was his stupidity and his venal, whatever you want to label him, is understandable because we know who he is. We know how shallow he is. We know he knows absolutely zilch when it comes to separation of powers, what the office of the presidency is, what the job of the legislature, and what the job of the judiciary is. He just wants to be a king and an autocrat. So his stupidity, we understand. But when you get the guy who's the Speaker of the House trying to defend that stupidity with even worse stupidity, Bob, I need for you to call up the even more stupid quotes that came out of Mike Johnson's mouth about Trump's stupid answers when it came to the Constitution of the United States. This is the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, that the party that controls the United States House.
I mean, we've discussed this multiple times on this show about how the Republicans just give him a pass and let him get away with whatever comes out of his mouth. Either they're silent or they take a pass on commenting. But they caught up to Mike Johnson at the Capitol today, and they asked is about whether the president is supposed to defend the Constitution. And Johnson replied, I'm reading from the Mediaite website, go and give him credit. Johnson replied with a question of his own. Is the president expected to be an expert on all of the Supreme Court cases? I don't think so. Now, and then he says, I think he'll uphold the Constitution as he's demonstrated earlier. Now, both of those comments are rather idiotic and stupid because this is not a deep sophisticated constitutional question we're trying to parse here. This is simple. Does the president defend the Constitution? There's one answer. It's yes. And the thing about he'll uphold the Constitution as he's demonstrated earlier. What has he demonstrated earlier? He's demonstrated that he's as far removed from a constitutional scholar as anybody in this country is.
Yeah, what he did earlier was attempt to overthrow the 2020 presidential election. That's how he defended the
Yes.
Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
What you guys are saying is Alan, to the best of his ability, means he has no ability. That's why he's not defending it. And what you're saying, Bob, is he is so inept at defending it, he shouldn't have been elected or sworn in the first place. I agree with both of you. So I don't know how much time we have left because we could stay down this rabbit hole mess forever. But
yeah, we have about 3.5 minutes left.
we should quickly do something on our upcoming New York mayoralty race if we can at least give a primer on how it's going to unfold because we're going to be dealing with who those candidates are in a show devoted just to that.
Yes, we'll take that up later. But go ahead, Alan.
All right, well, there's going to be a Democratic primary on June 24th, but early voting actually starts on Saturday, June 14th. So on Saturday, June 14th, you could vote if you choose. Primary day is the 24th. Right now, there are 9 Democratic Party candidates. And there's always some confusion about the electoral process because we have what's called a ranked choice system.
You got to speed this up.
That means you can vote for 5 people of the 9 for mayor, but you vote in order of your preference, number 1, number 2, number 5. And what happens when all the first place votes are tallied? If no one got a majority, if someone got a majority, they get the nomination. If no one got a majority, they're dropped off the list and their votes are redistributed to the other candidates. In the 2021 primary, it took 8 rounds until Eric Adams narrowly defeated runner-up Maya Wiley. So this is a pretty complicated process. Part of the problem right now is that there are competing candidates who are competing for the same voting bloc. So you have more mainstream candidates like Andrew Cuomo, Scott Stringer, Brad Lander. You have more liberal candidates like Zohran Mamdani and Adrian Adams and Jessica Ramos and Zelma Myrie. And then you have some candidates I never heard of. So what's happening right now, it's like it's if everybody's waiting for lightning to strike and they'll get it. And it has happened in the past. You know, if you think of Bill de Blasio gets elected, he was not well known. But what happened was the 2 leading candidates self-imploded. The Speaker of the Council had endorsed Bloomberg, and people didn't like it. And then Anthony Weiner, who's now running for city council, which is a total embarrassment, was caught up in sexting scandals. So it's like everybody's trying to stay in, hoping somebody will make a gross error.
All right.
And with that, we have 1 minute left.
So this is going to shake out. They're going to have to spend whatever money to get into name recognition, because I believe Cuomo's leading strictly on name recognition, but all of a sudden he's getting a lot of endorsements from a bunch of reverends and pastors and even some unions who didn't like him when he was charged with alleged sexual harassment. Some of those same unions are the ones that Eric Adams got backing from. He may still have some of their backing, so who knows? But more on that on another show. I think we're about out of time. This has been Media Watch, folks. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait. Raymond Peterson is under the weather. That's why he's not with us for this show.
I'm Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.